Are some of Marvel's most famous creators giving away some key points to Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars? Well, Chris Claremont apparently had a lot to say and might have revealed a ton about both films. We're going to dive into what he said, what characters he was talking about, and how seriously we should take what he had to say. Well, in the Comic Book Hall of Fame, let's be super duper clear. Comic book writer Chris Claremont is a bona fide legend. He has wrote some of the best X-Men comics ever published, and from its very inception, he has consulted on numerous Marvel movies. But now the huge question is he a big part of Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars? Well, recently he made an appearance at the Huntsville Pop Culture Expo, and he had a lot to say about some of these films. Now, according to reports, he was rambling a little, and I want to say right up front, before we drop these huge details, none of this has been confirmed, so we want to be super duper careful, but these are massive reveals. Also, for some of you guys, this could be, well, spoiler land, and I want to respect your journey to the theaters, so these could be the kind of details you don't want to know, and we want to be, well, pretty cautious. Now, according to Claremont, there are several characters making their way back, several of which were not highlighted in the initial cast announcement. 3 of those characters would be Psylocke, who has made some appearances in X-Men films, but it's unclear right now if it's going to be played by the same actress, Wolverine, and Elizabeth Olsen returning as a good version of the Scarlet Witch. Now, according to Claremont, there will be a definite return of the Psylocke character, but it's unclear right now where she'll fit in. Now, if I'm making any guesses, she's probably teamed up with Magneto, and since we know Ian McKellen is coming back as Magneto, well, that makes me wonder if Olivia Munn could indeed return as Psylocke. Now, she played the character in X-Men Apocalypse, and she had more than a minor role in that movie. Now, recently, Psylocke was part of Deadpool and Wolverine, where she was played by Aisha Hussein, but that character was kind of a blink and miss it version, and I don't suspect that would be the version that was resurrected. It would be curious if they used Munn, because all the other returning X-Men actors came from the earlier Bryan Singer developed version of the characters, and she definitely came later on down the line, which completely opens the door to many of these X-Men returning that might not even be part of that lineup and could show up in Secret Wars. Now, as far as Wolverine showing up, this has been something we've been speculating for a while, and really shouldn't be a big surprise to pretty much anyone. Now, the interesting thing Claremont did say, though, that Wolverine will kill somebody who is very, very important. Now, who this happens to be, well, that's completely unclear, but given how many huge characters are going to be in this film, including 2 more we're about to highlight, well, that might give us some clues. Now, as far as Hugh Jackman being in this film, that seems like a no-brainer to me. His return in Deadpool and Wolverine, well, was as well received as anybody could hope for, and basically returned the character to the forefront. It also opened the door to the possibilities of Wolverine being a much bigger part of the MCU, at least in the foreseeable future, and Jackman has definitely expressed some interest in returning to the character, along with a running gag he could be doing it until he was 90. Now, Claremont also said that Elizabeth Olsen would be returning, but as a good version of the Scarlet Witch. It's been pretty unclear since the end of Multiverse of Madness if Wanda Maximoff survived the end of the film. They've definitely given us indications that she did, and she didn't. And I think Marvel has purposefully played it very, very coy about the character. Additionally, Elizabeth Olsen has kind of danced around the fact of whether she would or wouldn't return. And although I highly expect her to come back as a Scarlet Witch, this might not actually happen until Secret Wars. And in none of these answers did Claremont provide any clarification which film he was talking about, so we want to be really, really careful there. I also think Marvel needs the Scarlet Witch, especially a good version of the Scarlet Witch, to kind of come back into the fold, because after Secret Wars, they're definitely going to be cobbling together a new world, and I'm sure they want that particular character as part of this. Now, believe it or not, none of these were the big news that Claremont brought to the event, and that brings us to the final 2 entries. Now, Claremont has reported that Chris Evans is returning, and we've already heard this was happening, but what's interesting is he said he'll return as multiple characters, including an evil version of Captain America. Now, we've all been wondering if we'd ever see Evans suit up as Hydra Cap, and seeing as Robert Downey Jr. is playing Dr. Doom, and there's rumors of his evil version of the Avengers, well, this kind of feels sort of confirming that information. But again, remember, Claremont is a consultant and has some inside information, but is definitely not the authority from Marvel Studios. Also consider the possibility that Evans could be playing, well, more than Captain America. He could also return as simply Steve Rogers. He could be playing Peggy Carter's armored companion from the What If series, or even Nomad. So I don't want to read too much into that, but I'm feeling right now we could be seeing the Steve Rogers and Sam Wilson versions of the Sentinel of Liberty lining up side by side. Now, finally, he pointed to Robert Downey Jr., and this is something we've heard for quite a long time. Now, we know Robert Downey Jr. is playing Dr. Doom. We even got a set picture the other day. So him being there isn't the surprise, but what was the surprise is that Chris Claremont said that he will indeed be playing multiple characters also, just like Chris Evans, and one of those characters will indeed be him returning as Iron Man. Now, Evans returning as Captain America and RDJ returning as Iron Man would absolutely drive people into the theater in a way we know Marvel Studios wants. The MCU honestly hasn't been the same since those two characters hit the door, and them returning for these two events, well, that could be a big deal. Now, I want to caveat the whole report with this was Claremont kind of rambling with fans, and he could have simply been part of meetings where they explored some of these possibilities, and he provided input and information to help develop the films. It doesn't mean any of this will be part of the final process, has been confirmed, and definitely will happen. But when the legendary Chris Claremont talks, you want to listen. And his involvement in previous Marvel Studios projects, as well as his history with Marvel Comics, well, that demands that we pay attention. Now, quite honestly, all this sounds like good news to me. Opening the door to more X-Men characters for the final showdown in Secret Wars makes a lot of sense. We're even hearing a lot of one-off and one-appearance characters could make it into that film. So basically, the sky's the limit when adding these characters. I also think there's absolute box office gold, including Chris Evans, Robert Downey Jr., and Hugh Jackman as part of this project. They are all, well, quite honestly, the big box office draws and will definitely bring fans into the theater. Now, whether this includes them playing multiple characters, well, that's the huge question. But given the possibility of variants in a multiverse tale, there really is absolutely no reason this couldn't happen. Now, I did notice left off this list was Scarlett Johansson, and honestly, that's the big question for me. Bringing all of these characters back highly suggests other characters will return, and I simply can't imagine getting the whole band back together, but then not including Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow as part of that process. This might be one of Marvel's best kept secrets, and they've worked those details out. But recently Scarlett Johansson said she wasn't going to return to the role. But as I always like to say, these people are actors. They deliver lines with feelings with an intent to lead you in a particular direction. So anytime any of them, well, lie to us, it typically lands pretty well because that's what they get paid to do for a living. And not only that, they're the best in the world. So Scarlett Johansson looking into a camera saying she's not returning really doesn't sell it for me because they're trying to build suspense and surprise. We're going to watch all the Secret Wars and Doomsday details really closely, but I do feel like at this point, we want to take everything with a massive grain of salt. Quite honestly, in these discussions, I think everything's on the table. Marvel's considering all the possibilities, and people like Claremont probably are being used to bounce ideas off of with the Russo brothers to see what works, what doesn't, and kind of provide them with the feedback that they need to cobble this massive event together. Personally, I'm just hoping they pull this off in a way that works, bring back the faces we all love, and deliver a pair of films that live up to Infinity War and Endgame, because the bar is really high. But until we know more, we're going to have to wait and see. Now before you take off though, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button and ring the bell for all the updates. We do daily videos and we want to be your place for all the Marvel and DC news, but we're going to bring it to you truthfully and transparently so you're really in the know.